tell us a little bit about some of the sideshows that you've had and run?
Well, actually, I started working when I was 13 years old in Hubert's Museum on 42nd Street. It was the Flea Circus downstairs in the basement. Now, you had to be 16 to get a job there, so I found a friend who was 16. I took his birth certificate, and we tore them apart. I put his 16-year-old gazump on the bottom, and I got the job. And I ended up in Hubert's Museum as the world's youngest magician. And I learned a lot of things. I learned how to eat fire there, I learned how to swallow swords there, I learned how to do magic. Get this damn thing out of my mouth. And I also, the first opening I ever made on a show was Professor Heckler's Train Flea Circus. Now the basement had, they had Jean Carroll, a tattooed girl, Woofu and Woogie dancing with a snake. They had Alex Linton, the sword swallower. They had escape artist and Albert Alberta, half man, half woman. And among all of this, there was a place where they charged an extra fee to go see the Flea Circus. And Jack Elkins had a very twisty mustache, and he said to me, "My boy, you are going to learn this. You're next." I said, "Well, I don't know how to make change good," because it was 9 cents. And if somebody gave me $1 asked for 4 tickets, I blew it. But, you know, it was okay. He says, "You'll learn." And the way it went was this. Ladies and gentlemen, once every hour, Hubert's Museum proudly presents none other than Professor Heckler's Train Flea Circus. In this enclosure, you're going to see dozens of real live trained performing fleas. Fleas that juggle, jump through hoops, play football, operate a miniature merry-go-round. Tiny little fleas hitched to chariots, they actually run a race. But the most predominating feature of the entire show is little fleas dressed in costume, dancing to the strains of music. Now, there is a small admission to see this. It's only 9 cents. There'll be no show on these outer stages until this attraction is over. And if you would like to go, ladies and gentlemen, the professor is inside, ready and waiting to give a performance. Fleas that juggle, jump through hoops, ba 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 ba. They'd all go when I close the door. "That's all, Professor." I'd scoop up the little bit of money, put it in a bag. It was a Canadian Royal bag. It was a bag. I threw it underneath there and put a padlock on the box. And then they went and talked on the two-headed baby or something.
Hubert's is I'm fascinated by Hubert's. I mean, that just is to me, I've always, I mean, I just inquire.
It was a weird place.
I know what it was like inside Hubert's Museum.
Well, you would come down a set of stairs, bing, 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 turn like this, bing, 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 bing. And at the bottom of the stairs, there was a nice Jewish couple. They would sell soda, cigarettes, and so forth. And they kind of took up a little corner. Then from there you had the show. It was on a stage. One went this way, one went that way. Then there was the Flea Circus. Then there was another stage over here, and there was somebody. Sailor Jim White would work there. He'd bend nails with his teeth. And then there was Albert Alberta, had a big stage, and then there was the girl in the fishbowl, and then from there you would go directly across, and they had Chief Amok, the guy, the head hunter, or they had Harold Smith playing glasses, you know, with the rub them with his fingers, or they had Charlie Phelan used to work there with the strongman. He used to swing the ball and catch it, or they had, who else did they have there? They had a guy that used to paint with sponges and stuff. And then there was a girl show. When you look this way, directly in front of it was a ticket box with a girl show. In the back there was a quarter to see a girl show. There was a Sex and Cellophane, you know, Albert Alberta, the half man, half woman, used to produce the show there, so he'd do that. And then that was the way it is. What?
I mean, who was Hubert? Who was he?
The hell do I know? I shouldn't say that. I don't know who Hubert was. Hubert's Museum. I have no idea who Hubert's was.
Well, what drew you to Hubert's? I mean, why? I'm going to do a segment on Hubert.
It was always there. It's been there since I know about it. It was there before I was born, I think. What it was primarily was like a museum, a dime museum in the middle of a theater district. Now, all the theaters on 42nd Street at one time were the vaudeville theaters or repertoire theaters, and in between the theater, or when the theater broke, people would go down to see these acts. Now, some of this stuff was up on top before it became a penny arcade, and they had a shooting gallery, and they had stuff over here, souvenirs they were selling. Well, the top part used to be an entire show. Now, this is going back way before I was born. So that thing has been there for like years and years and years and years. Yes.
What would you remember? What was your first image of Hubert? I mean, do you remember the first time you saw Hubert?
Yeah, I had my shoe shine box with me, and I think I might have been around 9 years old. And I heard this voice coming out there. You're going to see Professor Heckler's train flea circuit. Albert, Alberta. Now here, they didn't have a tape recorder. This guy that was Elkins did this. Albert, Alberta, half man, half woman. Why, your visit here to New York is not complete unless you see Hubert's Museum. Downstairs in the basement, you'll see magicians, fire eaters, sword swallowers, but the predominating feature of our show is the flea circus, the only flea circus in captivity in the United States. And then it was a little box, and it was a dime in those days to get down there.
And that was Jack Elkins, you said?
Yes, Jack Elkins.
Who was Elkins again?
Jack.
Oh yeah, but who was he? It was the.
There was a talker, very gaunt now. He was so thin. He looked like he had AIDS, I think. And then he bring them over. And he looked like he had AIDS, but he looked like something out of Moulin Rouge, twisted mustache up here. Very, very colorful looking man. And he had red spots, because I think he was a drinker. Yeah, you could bring those over. I could talk on them for a while. Let me put my whistle up before I swallow it.
Well, it's just, I can go on and on about Hubert because I remember my...
Well, let me show you some pictures of flea circuses. I had these made up to bring down here. Now, I got these out of a magazine that was very old. Now, this is a flea circus. There's the chariot race, and there's the trapeze, and there's a flea juggling a ball here, and I don't know that's the flea that walked on the trapeze. And then they had this is what they look like close up, see? And they put the harness on them. See, they were real fleas. A lot of people say, oh, no, we're real fleas. They're real fleas. And Professor Heckler's father started this. He started from scratch. That's a joke. I got to distinguish between the jokes and the...
So the fleas, I think people don't believe that it actually is a flea circus, that this is a real thing.
Well, this is pictures. This is the real thing. One picture's worth 1,000 words. There's a flea there with a harness on it. They would take a single strand, a gold wire, very thin gold wire, and they would twist it till they got a loop. See how that is? And they put the loop over the front two legs and then the neck, and they'd squeeze it with a tweezer, and then how you train them. So you have to train them first. Fleas jump. So what you have to do is you put them in a tube.
Why don't we talk about it? I'll hold those, and then we'll shoot those separately.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Well, don't make me crazy.
I won't. I was going to say, if you could just explain the fleas again. You had to
It's in a tube. He's in a test tube. And fleas jump. Bing, bing. And he hits his head. And when he hits his head, they refuse to jump anymore. They'll either stay still or they'll crawl. And at that point, there's trains. See, because the flea only lasts 4 or 5 days. So but at that point, you put the harness on them, and they don't jump anymore. Now, normally, if you want to train them to juggle, they will, move their feet, but you turn them upside down, and you got a little cotton ball, and you put it on top of them, and they'll do this number. Now, if you want them to kick the football, you put it on the side, and they will, bing, they'll kick it. That's the ones you don't get the jump. The ones that jump are the ones you use for kicking a football. A lot of people don't know this. And that one, you want them to kick the football. You go in there, you pick up a ball out of the cotton balls, and they'll go, bing, and they'll kick it across the stage. See?
It sounds amazing. Does it take a long process to work with fleas?
In what respect?
Well, in the training, it just kind of is pretty instant.
Well, it's kind of. Well, see, you're training. They say train fleas. All the fleas are doing are natural things. If they stop whacking their head, number one, then they'll stay still and they'll crawl, either or. So you can tickle them a little bit when they do the chariot, with he had a little piece of broomstick. They could tickle you more than you could tickle them, but he'd do it, and they'd run a race, and they'd say, there's Napoleon, and then there's Caesar, and then there's Marcus I've got to Marcus Arcarius. I can't remember the word. But these 3 little chariots in the cannon. Now Napoleon, and they'd pull it across. Now the most important part, a lot of people don't know this part, is they had to work on a white blotter. You know, they're using desks, but the blotter was the gaff on the joint. You don't understand what I'm talking about. That was the secret of training. Gaff on the joint, you don't understand. Flea, this was the secret, you understand. Well, the blotter they could get their feet into and they could move. And the white blotter would show them up. You know, when the people were around you, he'd show them. And what he did primarily is he had one on a little thing, like a jeweler's loop, but it was like that little square thing that opens. He had one hanging there, and they used to pass around. People go, see how the little fellows are attached to that. And then they see a real flea, then they could understand what was going on down there. So they knew it wasn't, you know, made up or something.
So and we'll shoot some of these close-ups. We'll get close-ups of the individual.
Have you got that thing of Roy Heckler, David? Roy Heckler, that little thing, it's about this big, and it has Roy Heckler on it, and it shows.
Yeah, we'll shoot that too.
Don't worry, nothing will be all right.
Take counterclockwise an inch.
Counterclockwise. I'll ask you that way.
What's happened with performers, you know, they get exploited. And I certainly have been interested in this. It's just something I want to do. But I mean, I want to make television, but I want to be sensitive to everybody. And I wanted to get primarily, I want James and what he's doing to really be able to, you know, further the mission of There are, yeah. Well, there's definitely a handful. There's a couple that are left. It's posters. But we just have such limited meat. I mean, the thing about this is that I'm in deep. And James has never been here to show. So I want to, he's always going to sell like this. So we want this to be a chance to, you know, have him float in different sectors. In this case, it's being on a college campus. He did great, by the way. For somebody who's ill, he poured it on. This guy. Thanks for getting these. But I mean, I hope that.
Next one.
Okay, thanks.
Behind there, I can see a shadow.
Don't move.
How much do you live shows? Do you have to, really? That's fine.
Real still.
I guess so. Well, you've been a... That's perfect. You know, well, you've been a real, you know, friend to James and so glad we can have one of us. We'll keep you posted. Okay. Yeah, I have your assignment. This next one.